Hey everyone, welcome to my second stream. Just loading up Airship now. Hey everyone, welcome to my second stream. Okay. Okay, let's make sure stuff still runs. And the goal today is I'm going to try to get enemies spawning from the server so that all observers can see it, and then attacking the base, dealing damage. That's the goal. This is just an import error. No. Core error. Okay, so we've got things spawning in lanes. But right now I am just spawning these locally by calling instantiate. So I'm going to switch them over to using the Airship character system so that it has built-in functionality for replicating to observers and managing health. And last week I had some mic problems, so let me know if I'm too loud or too quiet. Alright, let's make this a character. I'll do it this way. Okay. Gonna make them blobby. Alright, instead of just calling instantiate, we need to make sure we're triggering these characters on the server. So my level spawner needs to actually just run on the server. Okay, so I reworked instead of just instantiating a prefab, we're going through Airship to spawn a character, giving it the position and the template. And we're just calling the spawn on the server. And to show you how to test out in the server, just so you know, it's a good feature. There's a multiplayer mode in Unity, and you can create a server instance. That will load up. And if you make sure you're in dedicated mode, you can then test a real setup where the server is running logic different than the client. And make sure, as a client, you can see everything. Alright, there's the server instance. Let's try playing. Okay, the server is spawning the enemies, but I'm not seeing it on the client. And you can see there's a bunch of errors. Airship should automatically add any networked prefabs, but if it doesn't catch it, you can trigger it, I believe. There's it. Generate network prefab collections. Let's try that again. There we go. Alright, synced from server to client. Sweet. Now I also want to make sure that the enemy's logic isn't running on the client as well, because these enemies are going to be server auth, which means none of this has to happen in the client. And same thing for the collision. Okay. All right. I'm gonna switch up my layers just to get a little organized. I'm gonna make game layer 0 my ground layer. There's already a character layer we can use for player characters, so I'm gonna make an enemy layer. And that's all I can anticipate right now. So I'll just leave that. Okay, make everything in the level ground, except for this cube. Oh yeah, I'll make a base layer. Sure. Okay. Enemies are going to be on their own layer. I think I'm going to switch this from base to to handle turrets and the base, so just any player-owned entity. There we go. Enemy, nothing except... Ooh. That's confusing. It looks like the UI for this dropdown didn't update, so I'm just looking at what layer this is. I want it to only hit friendly entity. There we go. Something you may have noticed is that my character falls through the floor. That's because the character movement system is checking for the ground, and it's only checking the default layer, and so I'm going to also add my ground layer. Okay, let's make sure the character stands and the enemies still work. Great. The enemies are not working. They're probably detecting collision on something. Let's see. Ah, okay. They are moving on the server, but that's not being replicated to the client because I commented out the client's logic. But really, we don't want any logic to run on the client. We just want the server to replicate the transform information. There's an easy way to do that. With a network transform, which is a mirror's Unity component, we don't care about scale or rotation in this game. That should be good. We're going to sync from the server to the client for all observers. Alright, now the transform at least is synced. Alright. So to keep the base consistent with the rest of the logic for turrets and enemies, I'm actually going to make the base a character as well, so that it has its own health. We'll need to visualize the health somehow too, but okay, one thing at a time. Base entity, make it a character. Give it a network identity. With networking in Airship, anything that is synced between the server and client, any game object, needs a network identity. That's why I keep adding that. You can assign it to the character. And we don't need a network transform because the base is never going to move. And I believe I can just leave it in the scene here and it will automatically connect from server to client. So, how can we get the enemy to attack? Each enemy is going to have its own different attacks. So I'll make the attacks their own individual components that enemies can use. We're already detecting if it hits a base to stop it from moving, so then we'll also just start the attack sequence. And then the only thing that needs to replicate to the clients is the visuals of the enemy doing the attack. Okay. Let's make a script for the attack. And some of the turrets and player characters might share the same attack logic. So I'm going to make that its own folder. Make a base class that has the core functionality I want, which is just saying, maybe giving it a target. For now. And the first attack will just be a melee attack. Okay, so the idea is that every attack is owned by a character, and when we attack another character, it will run some logic. In this case, it's going to inflict damage on the target. If it's not null. Inflict damage. And damaging and receiving events for damaging is built into the airship characters. That's why this function already existed. So I made this health controller, but I might not even need it since we're using the default airship damage system. But we'll see. Whoops, I have two of the same scripts. How did that happen? Let's see. All right, we want the base is going to listen to when it gets attacked, so we can validate that it is in fact getting attacked. Every entity should be attached to on damage. Let's see what functions we have. Let's connect to when the health changes. New health, old health. Okay, so whenever the health changes, received damage, and the damage amount is new health. Okay. Add this to the base. So we don't need the just an entity controller, we want the base entity controller. Has a reference to its character and its rigid body. Don't need the health for now. We do need to make the enemies actually attack. Enemy movement, but we want... What do I have on my enemies? I see. Okay, so if we're detecting what the enemies are running into with an overlap box, and so I'm going to see if it's something that we can attack. And then attack it. So we want to see if the collider has an entity controller on it. Let's get the root. Root dot get component. Excuse me, get airship component. Entity controller. If it found it, we will deal damage to it. Alright, we don't need to directly do damage here. We want to actually call the function on our current attack. So if I say we have movement for the enemy, we also have an attack. I should keep my naming consistent. So this should be LD attack base. I don't know if I want to actually abbreviate everything. Probably just do this. That's good. So for my lane mover, I'm going to give it a melee attack. Assign its owner. Get its damage. Let's see what happens. Hey Newfie, are you there? Does the audio sound okay? Uh-oh. What's happening? Attempt to index nil with attack. That means I'm trying to call attack on something that doesn't exist. So if you look at this, I'm calling attack on this object named attack, which means this is null. So I forgot to assign it. We do that in the inspector. If I look at my lane mover, you can see that the attack is assigned to none, nothing. Because I added the component, but I didn't give it the reference to this script. Come on. There we go. Sweet. Glad the mic is working better this time. Nice. Oh! They killed it. I actually didn't expect that. Okay. Receive damage, receive damage. So each enemy was in fact dealing damage, and by default it destroyed the game object on death. Cool. Let's add a quick visual effect to show when the enemy is attacking so we can see what's happening. I'm also going to give the base more health. Okay, so in this prefab I just made of the base, there's my base controller. When it exists, I want to set its max health to whatever I define in the inspector. And I probably want to do this for any entity. So I'm going to move this logic up a level. And then for the base, I can set the health to something much higher, to 100. Okay. Visual effects. I'm going to make a new game object. Melee attack. Zeroed out. Add a particle effect. Effects, particle effect. I'm going to make it a burst, not a looping thing. Set the lifetime really short. Do 0.5 and have it fade out. And we'll have the size go down too. The camera seems off. Oh, like with me? Yo. Alright, hey, this is the beautiful green blob attack. Let's make it spherical. Don't need that many. Where's the dampening? Okay. All right, let's try that out. So the thing about visuals, like particle effects and stuff, is that you really don't want them to run on the server. It's just something that you want the client to see when something happens. So what we need to do is have the server tell the client that this attack happened, so that we can play animations and effects. I'm going to make this a prefab so that we can spawn it when we want. Need it there. This does not need a network identity because it's not being synced. It's just instantiating on the client. So this gets into sending events over the network. Just trying to think of how I want to organize that. I think the attacks will have the attack, which runs the attack logic. And on attack plays attack particles. I'm going to make a reference to a game object. a reference to a game object that will spawn whenever you visually attack. I feel like that's going to be common functionality. But we can also make it optional by just saying, if this doesn't exist, we won't instantiate it. Where do I want to keep all the events? You could keep all of your events in like one big class that just has events for anything, or you could have events exist on the high level managers of things. Like I have an entity manager and it has all the events for the entities, and I have a level manager that has all the events for level logic. At least for now, I think I'm just going to have one script where we can see all of our events that fire, and things can subscribe to that as needed. Yeah. So in game logic, create a new script. Game events. This is just going to be statically accessible. And this event will be trigger attack, and it is going to be a network signal, which means we're sending an event over the network. You can pass variables along this event, and so I'm going to define the owner's ID, target's ID, and just that for now. Every network signal has to have a unique name. Okay, these are going to be number IDs so that we can look up the characters that are being that are attacking and being attacked. And whenever we run an attack, game events dot trigger attack. This always happens on the server. Dot fire all clients. Owner.id target.id. But if we don't want to target, we just won't do it. If we don't have a valid target, we won't do anything. Clients.attack. We also have to listen to that event. So whenever a new attack is made, it will listen to the trigger so whenever it hears from the server, if this dot owner ID is the same as the event's owner ID, we are running this attack. Now we also want to get the character that we're targeting in case that affects the animations. In this case, it doesn't, but maybe you want to animate a projectile to launch and hit a character, or you want to place the visual effect on the target. We could do that. That'd be a good example, maybe. But when we're passing through an event, you can't pass a whole character from the server to the client. You can only pass basic types like strings, numbers. So we have a number that represents the character, and since we're using the character system, we can actually look up that character by this number. So we'll do Airship Doc characters find by ID, target ID, and this will return a character object or undefined if it can't find it. So I need to switch this to support that. And I'm going to say if the target exists, then we will use the target's position. Otherwise, we'll just use our own position. And if you haven't seen this syntax before, it is just shorthand. So you're just saying, if this is true, do this. If this is false, do this. So the question mark and the colon are the two syntax items there. It's the same as saying this. Yeah, something like that. Else, it's not transferring the message. Okay. When we attack, we send something from the server to all clients. The clients are listening to that event. If this instance has the same owner, it will run the attack and spawn our attack template. So now in our enemy, I just need to assign what visuals are going to spawn. So here's my enemy. You can see the attack template variable that I made. Let's drag on the prefab. Where is it? There we go. Enemy melee attack. No compiler errors. That's good. Let's see what happens when they hit the base. Nice. Wow, they're attacking really fast. Okay, so what happened there was good. On the server, there weren't any visual effects. On the client, we saw the effects for the attacks. That means that the server is sending information to the client, and we're getting a sync. That's great. I'm curious. Oh yeah, it does look like they genuinely did 100 damage before the base died. So let's slow down their attacks. Do I not have a cooldown right now? Where is that? So yeah, okay. So this hit detection is running every frame, which is probably overkill. Like I might move that to be slower. You'd only need it to happen that fast on enemies that were moving super quick. But what that means is that this dot attack is getting called every frame. which is obviously not what we want. So let's make attacks have a cooldown. Let's make them attack every second by default. And we'll have a timestamp of when we can attack next. Okay, if we don't have a target, we ignore the attack. But also, if the current time is less than the next valid attack time, we'll exit out. Otherwise, we are doing an attack, so let's store when the next valid attack will be by doing the current time plus the cooldown. Nice. Whoa, not nice. The visual effects seem to only fire that much. So why did it die so quick? I see. So I was doing this cooldown logic in the attack base, the thing that all attacks will inherit from. But in my melee attack, I'm calling that base function, but I'm ignoring everything it's doing, and then I'm just running my own inflict damage. So there's a couple different ways you can organize this, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to have this attack function return if it was successful or not. So if we don't do the attack, it returns false. If we do, it returns true. And now we will only run our child logic if the parent was valid. We just need to remember to return the same type of values in overload functions, or overridden. Alright, now the melee should respect the cooldown. That looks much better. Sweet. That's what we want. Okay, we got there pretty quick. The enemies deal damage, the base has health and dies, and we see a visual on the clients for the attacks. Before I go much further with that, I think I want to set up our character to at least move around how we want and have a 2D sprite. So our friend Bionic Sonic made a graphic for my character, which is awesome. Let's take a look. So the idea here is that the cat is split into many layers so that we can animate each layer individually, hopefully with splines. And this would be our first player class. So I probably won't get into the spline system today, but I at least want to get the cat in running around. So let's see, we need this to be on a transparent background. Oh, I don't have Photoshop. So for now, I'll just do a PNG. Unless it lets me multiple. There is a way to manage layers, but I will look into that later. Don't want to waste time investigating things that I don't know off the top of my head. Alright, here's our transparent version. We'll make it a sprite that is multiple, which lets you do a cool thing of creating multiple images from one texture. Body. A bow. Sweet. Okay, I'm going to open up my character prefab and remove all the things that I don't need. So in this game, you're not going to have your custom character clothing. You're not going to be using an inventory system. We're not going to use the default animations. We are using the movement system. We don't need the animation helper. Okay. We can keep the character collider for now, but we don't need any of the graphics. Instead, let's make a sprite. Womp womp. Oh, because I named it body. Yes. Big cat. How big is this file? 2048? No, that's fine. Interesting, I actually thought it would change its size. Oh, there we go. a cube in here just because it gives me a size reference. A 1 by 1 by 1. So there's my ground plane, the character sprite. This is probably all going to change as the graphics get tweaked and I use the layers, but for now I'm just going to place the cat on the ground plane and go to orthographic so I can see better. I think I want it about 1 unit big. Okay. I'm gonna add a weapon sprite. We'll move it in front. Yeah. Just gonna see if I could get the the string to be cold different, but we'll worry about that when we get into layers. I guess if you're right-handed, you hold the bow in your left hand, the arrow being drawn in your right. How do I put something like this? Fun. Okay. Alright, that's where our character will start. Since I deleted a bunch of stuff, let's make sure it even runs without hitting some sort of null error. That does not look like a cat. That is the default Airship character. The easiest way to set up a prefab for your custom character. Oh, I didn't even know somebody reworked the UI for the character config setup. This looks really nice. Look at those tabs. Okay, so in character, I'm gonna grab my character from the assets, LD character server auth. We'll let moving, jumping, sure. I don't think there will be a sprint feature or a crouch feature. Footsteps, I'll leave it on for now. We don't need a view model, the first person model. Save that. We're also not using the Airship camera system. Chat, sure. Inventory, no. The character config setup is optional. It's just a like a quick way to set up some of the core Airship features. So now I should have my prefab and the settings I want. Let's see if it looks like a cat. Nice. Meow. You can tell that the cat is skewed because we're using a 3D camera with 2D sprites. I'm gonna have to think about how to organize that if I want things to be in a 3D space and have the sprites always face the camera, or if I want to have the camera be orthographic and just fake the 3D perspective of the lanes. I'm not totally sure what I'm going to do about that yet, but at least we have the cat in. Okay. Do I want to have, what should I do next? Should I have the character be able to attack enemies, or placing a turret next? I'm gonna have to start making some actual design decisions soon. Probably be simplest to do a character attack. Or I guess I could set up the lose condition. Let's get the character going a little bit more. I think that'll be fun. This will be an opportunity to show animations as well. So let's open up character. I'm going to make sure I have things named how I want. Characters probably. Okay. I'm going to add an animator. Make an animator state machine. Animator controller. Didn't work. There we go. So in Unity, you have a state machine for your animations. This is the characters one. Oh, I have it locked. That's why. Okay. But I just made a new one. And in this, you can have many animations set up and then specify how it transitions from state to state. Okay, so I'll make a merger idle. Place it in here. Since it's the first clip, it becomes the default animation that will play. So this animator component here is what will actually handle the logic of the animation controller. So I need to give it a reference. Now we can animate that idle. There's a nice animation tab to do animations within Unity. I am going to hit the record button. I'm going to lock this just so I don't click off it on accident. Okay, so you can animate anything under the animator. So all of these sprites I can animate. And I'm just going to go a little bit forward in time, move, forward in time, move, copy the first frame to the last frame, and we have a really bad idle animation. Great. I'm just going to go to the curve editor so that I can tweak this height here. So I'm going to select all, and I'm going to scale it. Whoa. So that it's more subtle. There we go. I'll make it much longer. So I'll select all. You can move it with the transform tool. Alright, the body's moving. Let's move the hand with it. Or the bow, I guess. Now the arrow. I'm not going to animate the X or Z position, so I'm just deleting these keyframes. Okay. Oh, what just happened? Oh, I had the cat not zeroed out. Okay. Just need to not delete the first keyframe. Not playing. Oh, it probably played once and was not set to loop. So it looks like nothing's happening. Just gonna go to my animation clip and click loop. Yeah, it's moving. Alright, idle animation. Alright, I really want to attack these slimes. So let's see if I can do that before we reach 10 o'clock. We got a ranged character, which will be interesting. I think I'm going to do since this isn't PvP or fast-paced, I don't have to worry about, you know, client predicted bullets and PvP hit detection. So the simple way is that when the client wants to shoot, we'll send an event to the server. The server will validate that you can shoot, and then it will notify all the clients about the shoot. Then they will just visually move the particle, but the server will handle all of the collision just in the state that it knows things. Should be simple. Let's make forager attack. It's going to be a mushroom that he's feeding the slime. Actually, don't need a collider. And I'll just make it bright. Okay, so whenever I attack, I'm going to spawn this arrow and move it across the screen. And do custom physics checks, array cast each tick on the server to see if it hits anything. Okay. Alright, just like I did the melee attack, I'm going to make a ranged attack. I guess each projectile can handle its own logic rather than the attack directly managing it. So in this ranged attack, we're not just going to do damage immediately. In fact, I think we're not going to really have to do anything. It's just going to spawn the arrow, and then the arrow will handle its own logic. Is that right? Well, let's get the attack set up. This is nothing. Delete this. I just remembered I made a bin which holds the events, but I need to clean that up when it's destroyed. And I'm going to do something similar for each of the characters. Okay, let's make a new action. We haven't done that yet. So to detect the keyboard inputs, we use actions. There are built-in core actions like jumping, interacting, moving. But I want to make my own just to show it. So in airship.input, create action. And name this action attack. Binding dot key. We'll do F by default. You don't have to hold any modifier key. That registers an action type in Airship, and this will show up in the settings that people can configure. Now we can listen to that action. So whenever the attack button is on down, we'll listen to that event. We can make sure that the UI isn't focused, and we can see what attack name is passed through or what action name. But in this case, we just need to run the attack. Although I was going under the assumption that this is on the server and all of our inputs are on the client. So really what we want to do is just notify the server that we want to attack. So we'll use begin events again. Trigger attack is confusing because that sounds like what I would want right here. So let's rename that to something that makes more sense. Request attack. Client requests. Server notifies. Okay, requests will only come from players. And we only want to trigger attacks on characters that the players own. So I'm actually going to pass the player ID, which is a string. Game is client. Check for these inputs. If the game is the server, listen to these inputs. Game events dot request attack dot server on client. Player ID. I guess it doesn't matter if I was going to pass the character ID or the user ID, but character.player. Oh, the first parameter is the player that is sending the event. Oh, so I don't even need to pass anything. The server always knows what client is sending it a signal. So we actually don't need that. We have the player object. We can compare them. And then we can run the server attack without a target. So it's possible that that we don't have a specific target we're trying to attack. So it actually is valid to not have a target. And if we have a target, we use its ID, otherwise -1. Okay, I'm gonna add my character script that I just wrote. Assign the attack. Oh, I must not have a script on it. Ranged attack. Oh, what am I doing? No. This is just the visual. Ranged attack. Drag that in. Character. Attack graphics. Cooldown. one. Okay, I added it in the prefab, so I don't need to add it in this. Hey, it's spawning arrows at my feet. Okay. Cool. I'll have to wrap that up for today. I am committing this code to a Git repo, which is public. So if anybody ever wants to see the project, try it out, look at the code, you're welcome to. I'm doing this all on stream, so there's nothing really to hide. Day 2 of stream, added enemy attacks and started character effects. Cool, thanks for joining everyone, and I will see you next time.